This is your GNN timeline update. And we are be talking about the backwards bike, the unknowingness, the unlearning process.
A couple of weeks ago, we were endeavoring after the solstice ceremony to try and describe things, to try and describe how important experience is. And, you know, a lot of people have a lot of knowledge. They read books and they can just count off things and say, oh, you know, try this, try that. But, you know, they don't really have any experience and they haven't done it themselves. They just read it somewhere. And Kat came up, our producers came up with this clip that when he showed it to Andrew and I mean...
We were absolutely going, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And this is a scientific perspective by a guy that made what's called a backwards bicycle. So instead of steering it right to go right, it would go left. It's just backwards. Literally a backwards bike. And the guy in this discovered that he couldn't ride it, quite literally. You know the old saying that you never forget how to ride a bike?
Yeah.
You know, all those things that go into a bike, from gyroscopic precession to the size of the wheels, so on and so forth. There's all these things that go into how you learn to ride a bike. But the second you change one little thing in the logarithmic pattern, the brain cannot do it.
Well, it's almost like everybody thinks it's a piece of cake to fall asleep.
Oh, yeah. Unless you're an insomniac.
Right, or just being awake. And it's like, well, of course I'm conscious. Are you really?
Right.
Are you really conscious? So, guys, sit back, relax, and watch this fascinating video. We have so much to discuss afterwards. But first, have the experience of watching this video.
Exactly.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to Smarter Every Day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle.
All right. So the faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels. Every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way. Okay, all right, a second. All right, so, whenever you're ready. Yeah. Go ahead. No, you have to keep your feet on. Alright, here we go. Just give it a wait. Like, you gotta start rolling at least. Go. And go. Oh, no! Alright, back up. Okay, wait. Keep your feet on the pedal. Go. Go right off. Just keep your feet on the pedals. Handles on. Yeah, come on. Alright, one more time.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut.
Are you gonna give up? No. Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up, you got it. Did you see his brain get it? So he, in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult.
It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child.
All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast. I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm gonna see if somebody brings a bicycle and I'm gonna try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards, it's backwards.
This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias.
So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned. All right.
After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment.
I got it. I'm back. Oh, it clicked. Hold on, it clicked. I got it. Okay, there it is. There was the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike.
I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me.
That looked like I faked that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just a fake. You think I'm faking. You don't believe me.
That looks so weird. You were like, la la la, and it's full.
You think I'm lying, don't you?
I didn't.
I'm not lying.
I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike.
I mean, isn't that just a brilliant video? I love that video. The first time we saw it, I played it again and again.
And
then
again.
The comments that he was giving, you know, the
Yes.
actual, here it is, right in your face, this is how your brain works, or perhaps doesn't work.
And all of this stemmed from our GNN update that we did about how science doesn't know how to ride a bike. That has been disproven since the 16 or 1700s and was even recently disproved as early as the 1970s and 80s.
Yes, and then this guy comes up with this.
The backwards bike.
The backwards bike.
Is he manifesting his reality by unlearning one way of physics that may not even be explained?
Absolutely.
And he's creating his own reality and manifesting at the same time. This is exactly the metaphysical teachings we have been putting forth on this show for many years now.
what I like is that he was able to succinctly show that A, most people are biased.
Right.
B, that knowledge does not depict understanding in any way, shape, form, or manner, which is huge for those people who are actually out there doing the work. And then he was talking about the neural pathways of learning and how hard it was, even when it says you can always, it's just like riding a bike. Once you had learned something one way,
You were biased about learning it another way.
Biased about learning it another way, and I get this a lot with the horse people. But when you actually see the results, it's easier with a horse than a bike. 'Cause the horse responds straight away.
Straight away.
But with the bike, you start to see how fast is your brain, how really cognitive are you, and how much intellect do you have in your own muscles and control, which you thought you had, but really we don't.
We saw many people in the clip trying to ride the bike, putting their hands out, instantly putting their foot down for gyroscopic control,
Crossing their hands over,
trying to power through it, just to glide through it, to hold it straight. But something within their parasympathetic and sympathetic was sending opposite actions to the left and right, as well as their hips. In the end of the video, where you see the guy trying to ride a normal bicycle, there's a moment where he gets frustrated and he's like, all right, I'm going to ride this thing. And he just starts laughing.
That was the next real big learning thing. When we always say the greatest of things are achieved with a lightest heart
and a forgiving nature of yourself.
Exactly. And when he started to really laugh about this, because he knew he could do it, he knew it was in his memory somewhere, he was just trying to activate the synapses, which would then allow the bike riding program to be functional in the technology. And what happened is, Andrew was saying, he's like, this is when you see how
Spirit.
How spirit is being blocked by many things. And when you laugh, all of a sudden something was made accessible again.
And that program activated and he rode the bike. And you can actually slow motion through it and see him beginning the buildup of energy of a laughter, and poof, the brain kicks in. And he even says it in the video, it just kicked right in.
It just kicked right in. How many people actually realized, though, that it was through laughter and then could take that to the understanding, not knowledge, but then truly through that understand that the greatest of things are achieved with a light heart.
And when you're biased, it's very hard to have that light heart.
It is, because then you, as we have been taught to learn from without to within, we look and we try and find a way of justifying why we have failed, because we've only taught that we succeed or we fail. We have not been taught that is the experience that is the learning, and there actually is no success or failure. Everything is the experience.
Right.
And this is what they're missing. This is what he was endeavoring to teach, that experience.
So let's use this metaphor of bicycle and bias to learn one way, and metaphorically relate it to something we teach here on the show all the time, energy hygiene, spiritual hygiene. It is the same exact biased concept that's in that bicycle that is stopping you from having spiritual hygiene every single day effortlessly as riding a bicycle.
Yes, because many people perhaps are not aware, and if they are aware, they are biased within themselves and are so tough on themselves. So you get both extremes,
edges,
like we do have in humanity. We have both those sides, and then perhaps coming more then to the center point and being able to have more of a stability.
From a metaphysical point of view, you have 2 arms, 2 legs, an inner ear, and eyes, and 6 senses on a bicycle. You are interacting as a spirit at all levels with that. Now, what are you doing when you're doing spiritual hygiene?
We are cleansing ourselves. We are making sure that our mind has pure clarity, so that we can then integrate and take in the information that is coming from source, rather than from the white noise or the training methodologies that have been imprinted into our minds and bodies.
So that we can use our conscious application of the sacred moment to say that I'm using spiritual hygiene as a spiritual metaphor to create rituals and ceremonies, just like riding a bike up the street and down the street.
Consciously applying
the pedals of spiritual locomotion, so that your energy field is clear when you're done riding said bicycle.
Right. Because you are opening yourself up to new ways of information. And how many times did those people fall?
Hundreds of times. Many wrecks. And he said it there. Now, The neuroplasticity concept that he spoke about there, for him, he was so excited because he saw it in action.
Yes, he understood it finally instead of just reading about it and pondering it and pontificating about it and philosophizing about it and then coming to understandings and equations that are missing something. The actual experience. Without
Right.
the experience, how can you come to an integration of an equation that is truth?
The truth is biased at times.
Yes.
And that's how our subtle dogmas and belief systems prevent us from riding a backwards bicycle, or in another aspect, prevent us from meditating.
That's right. How many people have a real hard time meditating? And it was quite interesting. I was quite surprised. The other day I turned on a cable music station, and I was sitting in my car and I turned it on and I'm like, let's just see what's out there. Normally I don't like to listen to any of that. I have my own music, but I just thought, you know what? Something just told me.
Just turn it on.
Just turn it on. And I did. And here's the DJ talking about, I don't know about medicine. I've got meditation. I've got all of these apps. I think medicine is meditation. Meditation is medicine, excuse the pun. And I don't understand this. I can't meditate. I've got all these apps and it is now the in thing to meditate and I just can't get into it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just broken. And, you know, it first of all, it shocked me that we had DJs talking about that on a really hip radio. And secondly, that with all the so-called help and apps and music and everything out there for the person that hasn't quite come to various other areas, what is just available for the common man running the propaganda cycle, I was quite surprised at first that they were talking about it. Secondly, they have apps. But the thing that didn't surprise me was because there's no true understanding behind meditation, that person won't be able to do it because their bias, just like the bicycle goes this way, is actually stopping them from applying and accessing that part of consciousness within their spirit themselves.
Exactly. And there are even more and more metaphors that we can come to. Let's say we are doing a person that is an energy healer and has 3 patients in a day. You know, are you riding that bike as soon as you're on that first patient?
That's a really good question.
How long does it take for you to warm up and get into riding the bike? So that's the next part of how we transit out of bias, because each day you're going to come into bias whether you're aware of it or not, because there's subtle dogmas and programmings that are deep inside you that keep you anchored into this shared reality of domination and control in hierarchical order.
Exactly, and that's why I liked his comment when he said, he is the closest to me genetically.
And when he had his son.
To see how fast his son could learn this.
And his son learned it in about 2 weeks.
Learned it in 2 weeks. And if this would have been a consciousness strand that would be available and more pronounced, more of the monkeys, the proverbial monkeys around the world started doing that same thing. What we know about this phenomenon with the potato. If more people would have done it, I guarantee you that kid would have learnt it in the same amount of time he would have learnt to ride a normal bike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's apply this whole concept of what we said to leading a different spiritual life. Conscious application of the same sacred is exactly pedaling the bike. Okay? When we look at this metaphor that just because you have the knowledge doesn't mean you have the understanding of it. When one wants to be a spiritual person, they just are. That's this whole thing. It's a daily action where you find happiness in doing it.
It's not a title, it's a way of being.
Correct. A way of being. And when you're riding a bicycle, you are in a way of being.
Yes.
When you are being a spiritual person, you are in your own sovereign way of being. There's enough knowingness and action behind the knowingness that the true wisdom is learned through all of the actions.
You know, and this is the thing. This is where I get a little bit bummed out because people like to give titles like, I'm a spiritual person. Well, quite frankly, we all are spirit. We all are humans, and we all are spirit in DNA technology. Every single one of us is spiritual. I prefer to use a different terminology. I don't even like the word awaken. I'm trying to find a way of describing human coming back to its 0 point function, what it is always innately be. We're spiritual, that's because we're different. You see what I'm trying to say? Yeah,
and it's the rigid way of thinking that prevents people from learning another way of doing it.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like all of a sudden you get these CEOs, okay, and you get these lawyers, these bankers, all of these people that have their awakening. And because there's such a bias against the word spiritual and woo woo woo, all of that stuff that's been so
The negative
beautifully
programming.
created by the system and then fully run out by those who are destitute and then are just trying to get spiritual because at least someone then can't see what they're doing and make money from it. Do you get what I mean? That's been happening so often. So what word could we use for this guy? He's also spiritual. He's understood the basic mechanics of spiritual science right there, saying it in its way that it's only science. There's no spirit behind it. Even though when he laughed and himself, his being was laughing, that's when he was able to integrate it.
I was telling you when this video was going on that this material, they're speaking consciousness exploration lingo and don't even know it.
Yes.
And this type of crossover is how we make a brand new colloquial language where science and spirit can meet in specific subject matters that their individual bias of spirit and science have to be put aside so that the true understanding of it comes through.
So, shall we use the word true human true?
No, it's not even. Not even.
Truman Show. That just reminds me of that.
It's not even that. It's about coming to understand that we have reality biases. We have rigid ways of thinking. Especially spiritual people are very rigid in their ways because they've learned through the hard ways. If they aren't rigid, something comes back to bite them in the spiritual butt.
And that's another conundrum in itself. It's another trick within a trick. It's another dragon chasing its tail, ultimately, isn't it?
We say be unpredictable.
Be unpredictable and also perhaps endeavor to be as much as one can consciously open in the mind.
Correct.
Open.
So when you are trying to let go of rigid thinking and are trying to get yourself into, let's say, some bigger ceremonies, you've had one fire ceremony, or for those that haven't had any fire ceremony, there is a rigid way of thinking that's preventing you from having a fire. You can go anywhere. You can go and make it out of a tin cup if you had to. It's your personal choice of gathering the wood and putting together and activating a sacred neutral perspective and then doing what? Something with it.
Yeah. Doing something with it.
Riding the
Consciously
bike.
Doing something with it. Like
Whether it's up and down the street or 25 miles. The fire is the metaphorical bike, the burning time of you riding it.
And there are so many people that have found their golden keys, and their golden keys are so unknown to humankind at this moment, just like riding that backwards bicycle, that when they endeavor to explain their skill, people just don't understand it, or they think, well, that's not possible, or you've just absolutely lost it. When in fact they haven't lost it, they found it.
Right.
It's a fine line, and that's why we always endeavor to be really. I do anyway. When someone introduces themselves and there's a new material, I always am open first, and I look, and then I just see what I need to take with that, what that resonates with my resonance, and then what doesn't, and then I always carry on watching because some of the skills are amazing.
Huge teaching in what you were just saying. There are some people that, because they're biased, they come into a situation and they're forcing themselves to let go of bias, and all of a sudden they let information change them. And once they've changed a rigid way, you cannot go back to the other way.
It's like taking the blue pill.
Right. So you must be using your discernment and understanding to store information so it doesn't instantly change you, because that is true neurolinguistic probing, true photonic light programming that's coming through, that's being successful if your personal process has just been turned off and all of a sudden puts a brand new program in. Because it's just changed something and you can't go back to the other way unless you unlearn it. Just like learning a new, exactly, just like the bicycle.
So this is then, when looking at this, it's almost like you've got slots that you have access to, but if you want to use slot 3 that you've just changed out for slot maybe 1, and then there's 2 in the middle, you literally have to go then through slot 2 to slot 1, but you wouldn't be able to then encompass slot 3 and 2 at the same time.
Correct.
Now, that is really integral to an understanding of how the brain has been trained in this moment of now. But it is not how our brain actually functions when connected to heart space, because then you are all seeing, all knowing, all avenues, all perspectives in all ways.
And cognitive dissonance is the training that they're trying to impress into us so that we believe into a reality and give it placebo effect through tacit consent from the
Right.
parasympathetic body.
Right. And the tacit consent would be it's this way and not the other way, or we can only go
It's the rigid
this
belief.
way. It's the rigid belief, so that we can only ride the bike this way.
Right.
We can only meditate this way, when in fact meditation in itself, when you talk about the complete subject, is not one position. There are so many forms
Infinite.
and arts of meditation, because it's actually a training of what? Consciousness. It's
you go.
consciousness training. That is all meditation is. Nothing more, but absolutely nothing less, because this is one of the key elements of learning how to use, indeed, this DNA technology skin suit that we're inhabiting.
I like to call meditation consciousness yoga.
Ooh, yes. That's a good
Consciousness
one.
sprint running. Give it more and more languages to that, because that is what meditation is. You're allowing your unseen body to stretch and express and let down and build up and do all the things that it was meant to do while you are in a state of heart-spaced relaxation flowing with love.
That's so true. I mean, how many times have you gone on a walk and you've made this a meditative walk?
Just about every time.
Yes. Why? Because it's
Conscious application of the sacred without an unbiased vision, allowing myself to do that without resistance.
Because it is the choice that you made of beingness. I choose to be this way. People choose to be that way. They choose to be hysterical. They choose to be totally depressed. They choose to be all of these modus operandi. They will have good reasons for this. But ultimately, it's still being imprinted, and then there's always a choice. It doesn't matter how hard you've been hit. You always have that moments of choice, because otherwise none of us would be here anymore, would we?
Exactly. Near the end of the video, he said, truth is truth.
Truth is truth.
Whose truth is whose truth?
And see, and that's where it gets really complex, because when we understand that, again, it is a holographic universe, and what is within is then emanating without, then basically everybody's truth is truth for them. So then the truth is truth. That is such a convoluted word when we actually look at it, because what is the truth? The sun rises here. This is what the sun looks like. We can't even agree on the earth.
That's right. So
Other
far,
than
the only major thing we all agree on is Roman numeral time.
That is so true. Roman numeral time. That's the only thing we agree on. 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
And that's an unseen, unknown agreement that's all tacit consent long before you were born.
Yes, or you know, most people are still ingrained and sympathetically trained that there are specific industries that will protect them, that will guard them, that will keep them safe, and we're going to be all right because this is what we've paid these people for. And you know, you're always really psyched when you know people in these industries. People are really proud. It's quite fascinating because they might have the knowledge of what these people do and believe ultimately that these people will help them, okay, and believe then that they are still knowingly corrupt. But ultimately, when they hit the disaster area, who is the first person they think of to call? One of those people in the industry.
There you
so
go.
there you see how your sympathetic is still trained in an emergency. There you see where your bliss does some lies. Are you fully empowered, or are you still giving the power to someone else to take care of you?
Exactly. So our mystical truther industry, something that we have endeavored to give label and definition to because it was coming out of the infinite moment and trying to manifest it into the now. We, as the industry, must let go of the old industry terms because it is now biased. It is a backwards or a forwards bike.
Every word needs to be authentic, and it's putting together of, and it's an understanding of. It needs to be authentic because everything else, as we know this. We're all aware of this.
We must be responsible for
Yeah.
our words. We must be responsible for our actions. For those of you that are sharing the dinar concept and think it's going to come, as I've said since early 2012 and 2011, it's bullshit.
It's a psyop.
It's a psyop.
Yeah.
This has been going on for almost a decade since they invaded Iraq the first place. None of those bills were sovereignly printed in Iraq in any way, shape, or form. Please, stop using your cognitive dissonance to think the system's going to give you a few $1 million and redistribute wealth and make new millionaires.
Yeah, you know, it's quite fascinating how it's so much easier to believe in these things than to face reality.
Correct.
And actually to get up by yourself and make it real instead of relying again on something outside of you to make that happen.
So the next thing is the industry out there that shares information.
Yes.
Each information is a different backwards bicycle. Each stream, whether it's the dinar, the law guys, the spirit guys, the alien guys, so on and so forth, each one is a different perspective of a backwards bicycle.
Yes, it is.
You have to unlearn an old way to learn a new way, and once you've unlearned an old way, you cannot use that old way because you've just retrained yourself through your own bias. This is why it is such a tough time awakening in this world of truth is truth.
Yes, because you've learned one thing that works for you, but what happens is there's so many other perspectives and aspects. So this is only the first step, which is the first piece of a very, 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 very long equation understanding called the experience of your life and awakening. In every piece, there are sometimes 5, 6, 7 massive pieces that come each day that you put together that gives you this understanding. And then the next day, something else may come.
Right.
And then the trick is to remain open.
And remain open and sacred neutral observer. Therefore,
Yes.
you can ride anything because the new vehicle is your energy awareness.
Exactly.
And
it's
you're
your
not
training.
actually riding the bike down each individual subject matter. Once you can do that, you can use all the tools and techniques from all of the different things for what fits your truth moment of the now.
Exactly. So you're not biased anymore. You're
Right.
just open and calibrating, collecting, integrating, experiencing, broadening the horizons.
Correct. So when I was, telling the truther industry you need to change, you do, because each one's in a backwards bicycle, and there is programming out there that has affected us over dozens of years that has made a whole new lingua of deception.
It has. I mean, we were talking about that recently when we were looking into understanding how people use language.
Right.
And one of the biggest problems that we've been seeing, and Andrew has caught a lot of people doing it and has advised them in the truther and the spiritual industry. How many of you guys out there are practicing neurolinguistic programming
In your
to
website.
get clients?
In your
In
website.
your website. Okay, I'm starting to see this in the horse community a lot, and it's disgusting me. Okay, you are subliminally
Programming your audience.
programming your audience to buy and subscribe, to then follow your belief. And quite frankly, a lot of you out there that have all that time to write books and everything, you're not on the front lines. You're not there. You're pontificating. You don't actually have understanding. And some of those theories that you are bringing out
are just another backwards bicycle that
Yeah.
will make people unlearn their old way and learn your way versus having their own sovereign way of all aspects are truth.
taking away their sovereign free will of discernment with neuro-linguistic programming. Wow.
So once again, we want this information to be your new bicycle that isn't backwards or forward. It is the sacred neutral observer position so you can observe all sources of information.
And this is really relevant. For me, I never take what one person says. I look at many, many aspects.
Right.
And then for me,
Because you're always learning.
yes, for me, I discover something within, and then I go and see what what else is about this discovery. Who else is talking about it? What is their
Right.
experience? And then I integrate that with everything else, and then I allow it to sit for a while with myself and mystery.
You have
that-
to let
and-
it sit. It's like
Yes.
it's like the soup that's better the next day after it's had a chance
Or the curry,
to
the
conge-
curry.
the curry.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So that for me is something that I've learned because I discovered if I didn't, especially when I was dealing with dangerous topics and the higher
Right.
elements of hauntings or what, if I didn't, there would be problems.
Right.
And these problems would, if I had that, people, animals around me would suffer. So for me, there was
And
also
you learn through the shield of your own bias to make
Yes.
something different, to create another stream of consciousness, which was a different
Yeah.
backwards vehicle, so that you could deal with the remainder that was flowing over to you.
great responsibility comes with these things.
That's right.
And there are so many people out there, they get so wise, they get so far, and they're doing amazing, but somewhere the responsibility has fallen away.
Right. So those people that are in the awakening process, long awakeners, it is your responsibility for your own energy field. It is your responsibility for your own learning patterns. When you begin to see bias come through that prevents a full higher unity understanding, you can still listen to it, but you must not be programmed by it. And there is a deep internal bias when we're listening to radio or TV to allow your guard down, and there's programming immediately coming. And we've been trained that way as kids.
Yes. That was as soon as the TV came out, you know, as soon as that happened. Yeah, I've been watching this series recently, and it's an old series called Persons of Interest.
Great show.
Yeah.
So much soft disclosure in this show that it's crazy.
It is crazy, actually. And they were talking about, one episode was talking about this guy who had a project, and he was being funded by the machine that sees everything and records everything.
CERN.
Yeah.
We're talking about CERN, 633 different reality-altering projects.
And this machine had somehow orchestrated through emails and bank account transfers and phone calls and everything else to get these 3D printers in New York on several floors, and they would be printing out tablets so that every single child would have their own iPad tablet. So that from birth forward, they would have their own iPhone tablet, iPad tablet, and they could be from that moment on beautifully programmed and entrained
by the machine. That had just printed those, and there was complete unawareness to the surface society that imprinted into those tablets were observation tools that were never seen on the software.
And we have movie after movie, series after series
that shows this,
showing you this.
The Orwellian Big Brother perspective of information gathering.
Like in UK, there's no violence because everything is on camera. You cannot walk anywhere in London without saying hi to Big Brother over there.
Yeah.
And you know, they do that here too, but they do it a little bit more secretly.
It's just a more bigger country, and they have to do it much slower. But the major big cities are all similar to London now.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
New York is.
New York, yes.
And the thing in New York is they've got guys that will go on and tear them down and sell them for scrap.
Yes. Keep on doing that, will you, please? Thank you.
Willie the homeless guy, keep on selling them for scrap. So one more thing I'd like to go back and touch just again is the actual riding of the bicycle. When you were young, do you remember riding a bicycle?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember actually riding it? Did you start with training wheels, or did you just take off right away?
For me, it was quite simple. I had a really cool bike, and I found it quite easy. I wobbled a little bit, you know, fell down once or twice, but it was almost something that was ingrained in me. I think it's my Dutch heritage. They love bikes.
They love bikes.
Seriously.
Okay.
They're all about the bikes over there, and that's why it was so funny when you actually went to Holland, Amsterdam.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're sitting there. But yeah, you know, and I remember riding my bike a lot. I used to do a lot of tricks, and then, you know, the hills and ramps and spins and, you know, everything crazy that I could, because I was really testing how far I could go already then.
Right, and when you're on a bicycle, everyone's testing.
Yes,
everyone's testing.
Sure they are.
So for me, I had two older brothers, so I started learning on a little three-wheeled thing called a tricycle, and before that a big wheel. So it's a different, you know, when you're pedaling with your wheels forward, and I remember getting on the bike and I had a big flag on it, and they put training wheels on, and I would lean one side and just ride on the training wheel. And my dad's like, that's not riding a bike, and my two older brothers are laughing, and I'm like, take the training wheels off.
Take them off.
So I rode, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 minutes with the training wheels on, and my dad took them off, and I took right off.
Yeah.
Took right off.
Yeah.
Now, both of my older brothers had to learn on training wheels. It took them weeks. My dad laughed at it, that it took them weeks to learn how to ride properly without accidents, paying attention to where they're going, how fast they were going. But for me, I just took off. Did I empathically learn that from watching my brothers over years? Absolutely, I did.
I was just about to say absolutely, you know. And that's then also what we're fighting is this generational DNA. The last 3 generations, those memories are with us in this DNA technology that we're inhabiting, plus then all the other things that have been imprinted each cycle in the light bodies. So, you know, these are the things we're here to conquer, guys. But, you know, if we can name it,
we can claim it.
We can claim it. And that's why this discovery of this understanding is so vital. That's why since April, this guy's got 9.7 million hits. Why has this gone viral? Let's talk about the viral phenomena just for a second.
Because once again, it crosses over two languages, two
Yes.
lingos. Now, of those 9 million hits, how many of them are scientifically related people? A good portion of them. But that video has also been shared and replayed on other channels that aren't YouTube, so it's probably much higher than that. And the system of domination and control looks at that and goes, oh, okay, it's just science having sciencey fun. But it has not truly realized how much it's inspired the other communities.
Well, any teacher worth their salt and pepper, I don't care what system you're in, government, private, whatever, any teacher worth their salt and pepper would use this in their teachings. It will make their life so much easier because it's right there. How do you explain something that is unexplainable? You can only show it by action and then understanding from that action, and then you can give it as an example, like the solstice fire ceremony, for those then to go out there and try it themselves. If you don't try it yourself, you will not gain the
experience
and the experience.
Right.
And therefore you won't have understanding.
That's why when I encourage people to go and do their ceremonies, it's to do them multiple days in a row, to imprint onto you what sacred application of is.
And the other thing also that we need to look at is perseverance.
Yes, self-discipline.
We're a society that is like, I want it now.
Instant gratification.
Instant gratification. The spirit doesn't work like that.
No. Doesn't work in fraud time, instant gratification. You paid your $1. Here's your experience in the receipt.
It's like, remember, when...
Because you can't refund an experience.
Yes, and remember when I will just share it, but I know you've had the same experiences when I've been working on something. I've had something that I've been working on. It had something to do with one of the anatomies and how the scapula worked, and in comparison with the cervical and thoracic junction, okay, and how I could work with the synapses there, because that's all around the heart space, to then broaden things, because a lot of horses have those issues there through incorrect saddles and everything. And for months I worked on this. For months I started to look, and I would do a little bit of an energy thing here and a little bit of energy thing there, and I'd tweak that, and then I'd do some exercises, equine yoga sort of thing, a little bit here, a little bit there, the movements, the lectures. And I didn't give up on this because I knew there was a solution. I knew it was there because I'd seen it. I'd seen it for a glimpse, but I had to understand it so I can integrate it, so I could It was
your metaphorical backwards bike that you had to learn to ride.
Yes, and I was so passionate about this. It didn't matter, rain or shine, or if I couldn't find the books, and the nerve books I was looking for, they didn't exist, and all of these things. But 9 months, and I played and I played and I looked, and then all of a sudden I went in, I saw, I called it, I changed it, and boom, it was there, and that whole thing realigned, and I was just sitting there going, bloody hell.
You had your backwards bike riding moment.
Yes, and you see, to have that love, that perseverance, don't you ever give up, because that is exactly what you've been trained to do. That is exactly what they want you to do, because then you are easy feeding access.
That's correct. Now, I would like for you all to begin to apply this backwards bike vehicle to any process that you're being put into, where you have to unlearn one way and learn a new way. Yeah. And allow yourself to be the sacred, neutral observer and witness of the self, so you don't have to take on the programming of unlearning one and learning another.
That's so true. And another thing is that when you begin to learn something new, this will tell you a lot about your current status of self. How are you going to handle yourself? Are you going to get really angry? Are you going to get depressed? Are you going to get sad? Are you going to laugh hysterically? Are you going to take this seriously? Where's your determination? This will show you a lot about yourself, and then how much you as a spirit are actually running the body energetically, and how much the program is running. Because I tell you one thing, when you start to battle the program, when it thinks it's got you, and you're a little predictable every day, walking on and walking forth,
and then all of a sudden your lunch is 25 minutes late, and your old inner chemistry screwed up, and you go home angry and yell at your kid for no reason.
Yes, and that's where you really start to see, how clear am I? How clean am I? How much of this predicted response, chemical reaction, have I got not even knowing? How much is a sympathetic betraying me right now?
Exactly. This has been so much of the teachings that we have brought out for a number of years now. But in the DNA video that we did, we went deep into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic to give a whole new iteration in this modern language of how how far our parasympathetics have gone and taken control of us.
So what was this guy doing? He was downloading and integrating what?
Spirit.
Spirit with the strands of information, consciousness.
Of how to ride a bike backwards and ride a bike forwards within the same frame of reality.
Yes, now when we learn to biolocate, when we learn to work on other
Same
different
thing.
dimensions, it's the same concept.
Same concept, different neural pathways
Exactly.
that you have to grow and create and exercise.
You know, and this is actually why I wish we would have had this when the DNA thing came out, because it would have helped so many people. So really, if you guys haven't checked out DNA 1 or DNA 2, please do, together with this show. It is really worthwhile because it's another key for you. And we always get so excited when we get these really huge keys. It's another key for you to contemplate. No one here is telling you how it is, what to do, or where it's going to happen. We're giving you keys of information so that each person can create their own authentic understanding, what they then know to be as it is. This is the key here.
This has been an incredible GNN timeline update. We have comical understandings of the news combined with spirit and science meeting at one.
Yeah, it was quite the enjoyment putting this together, wasn't it? I mean, there are a million ways of how to do this, and we just decided to bring it out as best we could for now.
For now.
In this moment of now, with these perspectives of now. Camera 3. Oh,
And
there you
camera
go.
3, we are offering you these GNN timeline updates with the light heart and the humor put into them for a specific reason, because we are running into the dense times and the dense subject matters. And when we have a viral video such as the backwards bike that comes forth and can be a multi-layered teaching tool and experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope you had as much fun as we did. Camera 2.
And next time on GNN Updates, it is going to be an unpredictable moment.
Namaste.
Namaste.